How's it going, guys? It's your boy, Pickle Xendependently Minded here. I'm actually a cucumber. If you're watching this on video, you'll see that the avatar that I have for this is not even the avatar that I created because for some reason, I can't figure out why this program that I'm using won't load my avatar anymore. When it loads it in, there's stripes of green going across it. It's really annoying. I've searched the forums for this program. I can't figure it out. But I'm still going to persevere for you guys. For the people who like visual podcasts, they like to watch them. This is for you. I'm going to be a pickle. This is the avatar that I've chosen because it's so ridiculous. Anyway, hope you guys are doing good. Back at it with another episode. Hope you are still alive. Hope you're hydrating. Hope you're safe and happy and your families are doing well if you have them. There's not really much to talk about. I wanted to do something a little bit different today. Kind of wanted to do a State of the Union style address, just a State of the Union from my perspective, because obviously the way that I see things going in America could be different from others. Some people are very happy. Some people are succeeding. I'm not discounting those people's experiences, but there are also others that are not doing well. I'm looking at myself in this avatar. It's like I had the lighting all good. The calibration looked fine. It seemed to go well, and I got wonky eyes. I keep like eye twitching. Maybe it's because the eye twitching is because of how annoyed I am with the state of things with this freaking program. But anyways, before I get into my kind of State of the Union and where I think the direction that we're headed if we keep course, talking about we as the United States of America. I know I have a lot of people who listen to this podcast that are not Americans. The analytics show I have quite a few countries, quite a few citizens of other countries, or at least residents of other countries that listen, which is flattering. It really is. I appreciate the support. So this article that I have pulled up behind me, well, you can't see my finger pointing at it like those weird vloggers that always have to put their fat fingers up. Oh, look, behind me is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Anyway, so apparently Ukraine came out with a quote-unquote victory plan. I don't think this is the first time that they've done this, but you gotta love these. Gotta love the arrogance and the pure looks of evil on these people's faces. Signing missiles that are about to go kill presumably innocent people in Russia. Yes, I know that not every person in the military, not every human in the military in a country is innocent. They're also not guilty. They're also not evil. They also, in the case of Russia, oftentimes don't have a choice to be in this situation. And the pure glee on these people's faces, this is in the Scranton Army ammunition plant. So they're happily signing missiles that they know are going to damage or kill Russian civilians and military personnel. Call me a bleeding heart liberal or a big wuss, whatever. I'm not into that. I'm not into death. I've said it many times before. I don't like people dying. The same goes for Ukrainians. But you can take the label and you can shove it. When human beings die, it makes me sad. When innocent human beings die, it makes me sad. And obviously, innocent is a loaded word. People can debate who's innocent and who's not. But I know for a fact that there are many men, young men my age, in Russia, who want the same exact thing as me. They want to succeed in life. They want to possibly have a family. They want to prosper. They want to eat a nice dinner at night. They want to watch TV, want to play some video games. They want to go to the movie theater. They want to work out at the gym. They want to do the same things that I want to do. And the same goes for Ukrainians. Don't get it twisted. There are a bunch of young Ukrainian men and women that want the same thing out of life as 99.999% of all humans that have ever existed. They just want to prosper. They want to live a nice, long, happy, fulfilling life. And they're getting that choice taken from them by this war. And the issue that I've had with this war from the beginning is this so-called victory plan that's in question here with this article. If you look at, and I'm not a war buff. I'm not a history buff. I'm not a military strategy buff or expert. But if you look at the most famous and most studied generals, people like General Patton and the people that General Patton studied, I couldn't give you the names, but they all studied the strategies of generals that came before them that had success. The difference between them, those generals that succeeded in their outcomes, is that they had a clear goal. General Patton, even the generals in Nazi Germany who were sweeping across Europe, and it was really insane and scary how quickly and how successfully they were in the beginning. And then the generals that countered them, and because of them, they defeated the Nazis in World War II. World War I, the most famous generals, whoever they were, I couldn't tell you a famous general from World War I. The point I'm getting at is you need to have a clear goal, a clearly defined goal, and there's never been a clearly defined goal with this Ukrainian defensive or in the counteroffensive and all this garbage. Since the beginning, and who knows, the same thing goes for Russia. Nobody knows Putin's actual plan. Putin claims that he decided to invade Ukraine because he was threatened by NATO weapons being moved right on the border, right on the western border of Russia. And that this is true. There are weapons pointed towards Russia at all times on the western border, on their western border. And any leader of any nation would be upset at this, especially if they don't have good relations with the members of NATO. So I understand that. What his goal is, what the plan is by invading Ukraine, who knows? Nobody knows. A lot of people have said they want to erase Ukraine off the map and just absorb it into Russia because Ukrainians are not a separate culture. They're not a separate people, but they are. They are culturally, they are ethnically. And I just learned something that I thought about. We don't have a clear answer on this, but ethnicities, you have like overarching ethnicities, and then you have related ethnicities from the same genetic family groups that branch off. So obviously Ukrainians and Russians, they're a type of Slav, they're Slavic, but there are distinct genetic differences between Ukrainians and Russians. So I've always wondered, as science goes on, I wonder how long it takes for a distinct ethnicity to be created, because obviously it's going to depend on a lot of different factors, including environment. So if Ukrainians decided a branch of Ukrainians decided to leave Ukraine and go to a different part of the planet, after, I don't know, so many generations, there's going to be a distinct ethnicity there because of the weather, because of all the environmental factors. So I find that really interesting. But according to some Russian ethno-nationalists, or whatever the term is, Ukraine doesn't exist. Ukraine is not a real place. Ukraine is not a distinct place. They're just Russian, so let's absorb them. That's not true. That is categorically false. So I sympathize with the Ukrainian people. I sympathize with the Russian people that don't want to kill each other. There are Ukrainians and Russians that they have family members that live in both countries. They love each other. They see each other as normal humans. But when the governments start to other people, which is what I like to say, when they like to dehumanize the other side, is when we have issues like this. Ukraine does not have a clear victory plan, and neither does Russia. And that's why this conflict is so complicated. Because what is Ukraine's actual plan? If you look down here, according to this AP article, Zelensky's plan is to get a formal invitation for Ukraine to join NATO and permission to use Western long-range missiles to strike military targets in Russia. This is a red line, not just in my opinion, but also if you ask the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, this would be a red line. This is not a plan. This is not a legitimate victory plan. This is not something that is actually possible. This is not a winning This is not a realistic outcome. This is not something that's going to happen. It's not something that I don't want to say it's not going to happen. It shouldn't happen. Because if you think about it, just use logic. And I know people are going to disagree with this logic because it might be flawed logic. I've never served in the military, but if you look at something like Afghanistan, Russia tried to invade Afghanistan and it ended up failing. Then America decided to try to invade Afghanistan, and they learned that it was something that's very difficult. And if the largest and strongest and richest superpower and military in the entire world couldn't invade a country like Afghanistan, what makes you think a small, poor country like Ukraine can successfully strike military targets within Russia without there being catastrophic consequences for the people of Ukraine and possibly the allies, not possibly, realistically, the allies that supply these Western long-range missiles for Ukraine to strike within Russia? Do you think the United States could go in and invade Russia successfully? If it was just America versus Russia right now, the American military versus the Russian military, do you think we would succeed? And when I say we, do you think America would succeed? First of all, no. Second of all, the entire world would end. Because you have two nuclear powers. Eventually one of them is going to decide, okay, it's time. It's time to open Pandora's box and blow that lid into the wind, because that box is never going to be shut again. How can this be perceived as an actual victory plan? And luckily there are some Western allies that don't like this idea. It just says in this article, it's received mixed reactions from Western allies. That's been the case since the beginning. NATO has not agreed. Not every country has agreed within NATO on the plan. And this to me is very basic. There is no realistic end goal for Ukraine. At least there's not a realistic end goal that involves violence, that involves joining NATO and allowing Western long-range missiles to be used by Ukraine to strike within Russia. That's not a good goal. It's not a good plan, as Tony Stark, Iron Man, would say. If America couldn't invade Russia, Ukraine definitely can't. I don't care how many missiles you send them. I don't care how many countries equip them with weapons and ammo. Ukraine in nearly 3 years, has lost an insane amount of people. And their population is not that large. So this is statistically not a plan that's going to succeed, which leads me to what I've been saying for the longest. Without a clear plan, without a clearly established end goal, something is afoot here. There are a lot of shady things going on here. Lots of people are getting rich from this war, which is why I'm opposed to it. And I know it's a cringe. Oh, how stunning and brave you are to come out against war. But I'm going to say it till the day that I die. War is an atrocity. War is horrible in every single instance. I know there are nuances. I know there are complexities to every war. But no matter what, war is not justified, because there are an infinite amount of possibilities before deciding to go to war, before deciding to take another human life, for diplomacy. And if you believe the stories, if you believe the journalism on this war, there were actual opportunities for diplomacy. There were peace plans that Ukraine and Russia were about to pursue, that were about to agree to. And certain Western leaders stepped in and said, absolutely not. We want to continue to see Ukrainian and Russian men and women die. So that's where we're at on this. And in the Middle East, apparently there was just an intelligence leak. I think Iran somehow got their hands on some U.S. intelligence that showed that Israel was planning to strike Iran. So it's pretty damning evidence, but it's also something that anybody who's paying attention knows this is going to happen. Just look at the history of the Middle East. Nobody gets attacked in the Middle East and doesn't get revenge and doesn't retaliate. I could be wrong. Someone point to one instance out of a trillion violent incidences in the Middle East where they didn't retaliate. And that's the issue. That's what makes this conflict and the brewing conflicts in the Middle East and just around the world so complex. And I don't envy people in the military. I don't envy exercise planners. I don't envy high-ranking military officials because this is not a job that I would want. Truly. I get stressed out thinking about it now. I get depressed thinking about it now. When you read the stories, you look at the figures, you hear the testimonials of people involved in war who have lost loved ones in war. It's horrible, and I wouldn't want to be involved in that. It weighs too heavy on the heart, and I guess that's why I'm not in the military, because the people that make these hard decisions, this is my optimistic view. The good men and women in the military, which there are many, when it comes to violence and war, they look at, what's the way to reduce the amount of casualties? How can we do this? If people are going to die no matter what, let's do some forward thinking and try to figure out how to reduce the amount of casualties. It's not a job that I want to do, that's for sure. But the State of the Union address I wanted to work on. Let me pull up my notes that I have. The election it's about 3 weeks away. Let's look at my calendar real quick. Yeah, it's 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away, we're going to find out who the next president of the United States is. And I don't like being that kind of person. Every year, every 4 years, people, depending on what side, they swear their guy or their girl is the person that's going to save the world. The other side is going to cause World War III. I've been hearing this rhetoric since I was a kid. I vividly remember being in 3rd, maybe 4th grade. I was living in Colorado Springs, and it was the 2008 election. Obama was running against John McCain. And I remember, even as a kid in 4th grade or 3rd grade, I had some of my friends who were talking about the election. Obviously because they saw it on the TV, or they heard teachers, or they heard their parents, their family members talking about it. And I remember thinking, I don't even know what this means, but it was interesting. And all of us kids started to talk about the election and who they were going for as if it mattered, as if we knew what the heck was going on. I definitely didn't. This was the first time I even was sentient enough to understand an election, because the last election before that, I was 4 years old. It was 2004, or I was 5 years old in 2004 when the election was going on. And I remember kids were asking teachers, 4th grade teachers, and some of the teachers, the good ones, the better ones, were saying, I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for. And they moved on, changed the subject. A couple of the teachers said, here's who I'm voting for. And I just remember thinking from then on, because there was a kid, one of my friends, who said, if Obama becomes president, he's going to start World War III. And I just remember thinking, what? What does that even mean? I was 8 years old. He obviously heard this from his parents. I come to learn later that his parents, they were hardcore Republicans. They were just diehard Republicans, straight ticket Reds. And that's always stuck in my mind. The first time I heard this rhetoric, I was 8 years old. And every election since then, it's got to be, the stakes have to be dramatic because they want people to get involved, they want people to vote. And I've always been turned off by that kind of rhetoric, because at the end of the day, the politics that matter the most are local politics. The politics that most people are not actually voting on. So the midterms, They affect you, your local elections, they affect you more than who is president. Not saying who's president doesn't matter, but don't fall in for the doom and gloom trap. If Kamala Harris becomes president, who I'm not a fan of, I hope she succeeds. I hope she does better than she's done in this last 4 years as vice president. Granted, the vice president, it's a debatable topic on whether or not the vice president actually matters or does anything. But in the case of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, I think it does. I think the establishment that stands behind the president matters more, but we don't have control of that. So I don't think Joe Biden was making any of the decisions for his entire term. And I don't think Kamala Harris was either. I think it was the establishment behind her. I think it was the Democratic Party that was making the decisions. Because if you watch her decision making, if you watch her improv skills, if you just look at her inability to stay consistent, her inability to answer questions off the cuff, her inability to make any resemblance of a coherent statement without a teleprompter, makes me think she's not the person making decisions. She just isn't that type of person. She's not a leader. But if she becomes president, I want her to succeed because I don't want America to fall. I'll be eternally grateful that I was born an American. I'm more and more disenfranchised and disillusioned. Disenfranchised isn't a good word. I'm not a victim. I'm more and more disillusioned with America the older I get, the more I look back on my childhood, the more I think about the promises that were made to my generation, the guarantees that were supposedly in place for my generation. And it's really jaded me a bit. So I've been conflicted because I'm an optimistic person and I always like to focus on the beauty and the good in people, in places, in the planet. And I will always see America as a more beautiful than ugly country. Always. I would debate someone for 30 days straight with no sleep, and I won't waver on that. But the state of the union right now is as bleak as it's been in my lifetime. And granted, I've only been alive for 25 years. It's the bleakest it's ever been. And I just want to address the main arguments, the main talking points for the main two voices, the main two political perspectives. And I say main in a very insulting way. I don't mean it in a complimentary way. Well, these are the two mainstream arguments, they must be the best. They're not. If you haven't voted yet, I encourage you to register as an independent. If you're already registered and you're registered to a party, I encourage you to register independent. Because no single political party has earned, or should, honestly, no political party should ever automatically gain someone's support. Because there are too many nuances when it comes to politics. If I was to vote straight ticket for a Republican, that's assuming that I agree with every single Republican candidate's views and their plans and policies. And that's not the case. So I encourage everybody who decides to vote to take time to vote. Research the people who are going to be on your ballot. Research the judges. Research the district attorneys. Research the representatives. Research the governors. Research the presidential candidates. And choose what's best for you and your family. Because there is no right or wrong when it comes to this stuff. Everybody votes on specific issues that affect them and or their family. So there is no right or wrong. Never forget that. You don't need to look differently at other people because they're voting on different issues. I do not look at my family members who I know and I love and I know they're great people just because they're voting differently or just because their political perspectives are different. If I have a cousin who I grew up with, I have great memories with, I know deep down they're a great person, I do not give a crap if they're voting differently than me. Because I know them. I know they're a great person. I know they have good intentions. And I know they're beautiful people and they have a good soul. Remember that. If you have critical thinking skills and you also have empathy skills, combine those together, put yourself in another person's shoes, and try to understand them. It sounds crazy, but this is a simple exercise that we as a country, as Americans, are not doing. And it's not just a uniquely American issue. There's a lot of political division across the world. But I truly believe if people could critically think and also have empathy, that's a superpower. If you exercise critical thinking skills along with empathy at the same time, you wouldn't hate someone for their political opinions. Period. Right now, one of the biggest talking points of the right, of the Republicans, the conservatives, is the stop all foreign aid. They're starting to parrot isolation as talking points. The reason we can't do that is because we have a lot of allies that depend on us. There are a lot of great people across the world that depend on us. We cannot stop all foreign aid. When people say this, they don't understand truly how much aid we give to the rest of the world. America can send foreign aid while also sending aid and taking care of its citizens, which it needs to do. I understand their perspective. The reason why people say stop all foreign aid is because they're seeing every week we're sending millions or maybe billions of dollars to other countries in aid. But we're not sending that aid to our own citizens. So I understand that perspective. Right now, the best possible plan, in my opinion, the best way forward, because of the fact that the US dollar is weakening in power, there are large populations, populous countries that have banded together and agreed that they're going to get off the US dollar and not use it as their currency. Right now, it's the world's reserve currency. If a bunch of countries start to give up and decide we're going to use our own combined currency, whether BRICS comes up with their own, who knows, whether they decide to use the Chinese yuan or whatever it's called, or the Russian ruble, or the Brazilian, I'm not sure what they use. The members of BRICS have decided, and they're big countries, China, India, I believe, and Russia, and there are a bunch of other countries in there. That's not good, because the bargaining chip that people like Donald Trump has used to keep countries from going to war, and that all presidents have used, is money. It's sanctions. The best way to deter a country from doing something that we don't want them to do is through sanctions, through monetary sanctions. That's better than outright war. That's how we addressed it in the past. We would invade a country, we'd bomb them, and we'd try to kill them and install a new puppet regime. So the new leader can have the citizens of Vietnam do what we want them to do. But obviously that didn't work in this case, in the case of the Vietnam War. You can't control countries financially when your currency is in a downward trajectory. When your currency is in a downward trajectory and you put sanctions on other countries, and you put sanctions and tariffs on American products, it carries less weight. Because right now, America is not really making anything that people are buying, that people want to buy. We export oil and we make planes. Boeing aircraft are the largest, most profitable product that's created in the United States that's sold to the rest of the world. And what's happening with Boeing right now? Probably the lowest level of consumer trust they've had in the history since they were created as a company. Because of accidents, because of shady stuff with engineers and stuff like that. America needs to bring jobs back to manufacturing jobs back to America. We need to not only bring manufacturing jobs, they need to be good jobs. They need to be jobs that employ Americans, and they need to be creating high quality products that the world wants. Not just that the world wants, that the world needs. Why, when you think of American cars, do you think of 50s and 60s cars? Because that was when America actually made good cars. Trump was talking about a story recently where he went to, when he was president, and he traveled to Germany and he talked to Merkel, who was the former president or chancellor, whatever they call it here, of Germany. And he asked her, why are there no American cars here? Why don't you see American cars here often? How many BMWs, Porsches, and Mercedes and Volkswagens do we see in the States? A ton. Why aren't American cars here? I don't know what her answer was. I'm not sure. I don't remember if in this story she explains or even gives an answer. But I'll tell you the answer. The answer is because American cars are trash. Nobody wants to buy them. They're not well made. They're not worth the price. Therefore, nobody's buying them. So that's a small example. But if we make cars that are better, other countries will import them, and that will make America money. Small things like that contribute to the strength of the US dollar. And with the debt at an insane, it's been at an untenable amount for a long time, but it grows every single day. And soon enough, when we default on this debt, it's going to hurt every single American. The rich will be able to handle it, but most Americans are not rich. Focusing on making America better, truly, making Americans healthier, making Americans safer, bringing manufacturing jobs. And when I say manufacturing jobs, I don't just mean get 10,000 people employed in the city of Detroit. I mean, start creating things in America again. Start innovating and making things that the rest of the world wants so the US dollar doesn't plummet. If the US dollar plummets, that's the end. That's the end for America. Because we've been bullying people militarily since we became a country. But the last 40 years, we're still bullying people militarily. But we've prevented a lot of conflicts using sanctions, by using the US dollar and holding it over other countries and leaders' heads. And if we want to continue to support our allies, we want to continue to try to prevent conflicts across the world, and be proud about being the peacekeepers or the peacemakers, we need to save the US economy. We need to start creating things again. And we need to save the US dollar. Obviously, it's easier said than done. That's why I'm not going to be president. That's why I'd never run for president. So that's what needs to happen. Regardless of your political opinions, regardless of the party that you owe allegiance to, if any, we can all agree that on certain things, like the US dollar needs to not plummet and not become the world's currency. We can agree that we need manufacturing jobs in America. How do we get manufacturing jobs back in America? One, we either reduce the corporate tax rate, or two, or both. We could do both at the same time. You punish American companies that are registered as American companies, quote unquote, that are taking their factories overseas because labor is cheaper. It's pretty simple. We figured it out before, we can figure it out again. So that's the State of the Union. The state of the Union's economy. How about the health? How about the health and safety and well-being of the American citizens? It's the worst it's been in my lifetime. 70% of Americans, I believe is the figure, are at least overweight or obese. 2024 was the worst year for chronic illnesses in the history of the country. So people are fatter, They're unhealthier. Wouldn't be surprised if life expectancy is starting to drop. And people are mentally unwell. The problem with issues like mental illness is it's such a unique issue that we're just starting to understand. It can come from a bunch of different factors. It could come from childhood trauma. It could come from trauma as an adult. It could come from drug use. It could come from genetics and a mixture of environmental factors. But we need to get to the root cause of this. We need to figure out why there are so many mentally ill people, why there are so many people who are sick physically and mentally across the country. Sorry, I can't pause video podcasts as easily as pausing audio podcasts. The health of people's brains, their mindsets, their souls, and their bodies is deteriorating in America. So that's where we're at as a country. That's my State of the Union address. Things are looking bleak. Things could be looking up, but right now they're looking bleak. The direction we're headed, I think we're at a breaking point, truly. I think that if leadership in America doesn't shape up, I think we'll pass that breaking point and we'll start to see the downfall of the United States. I truly believe that. Right now, the thing that made America so great in the beginning, which was capitalism, it's now being used against it, against the country. Capitalism is a great system. There has to be regulation. There has to be a decoupling of the government and the corporate entities. Right now, they're married. And that is the main root cause of, truly, it really is the root cause of almost every issue we have in the country. If you just trace an issue back, like, for example, why the food is poisoned, you trace it back to the companies, the fact that there are people who work for the FDA that also used to work for the food companies, for the stuff that they're supposed to be regulating, it always goes back to money. It goes back to corruption between corporations and government entities. If you trace something back like, why is Ozempic being studied on right now to see if it's good to be, if it's safe to use on 6-year-olds, kids who are 6, rather than having kids eat healthier, having kids not eat ultra-processed foods, having kids exercise. If you trace that back, why is Ozempic being studied on kids? It always goes back to money. If you look at why the United States has sent so much foreign aid to Ukraine, despite there not being a clear plan, a clear goal, it goes back to money. There are a lot of defense contractors, a lot of government officials who are invested in these defense contractors, or they have connections with these defense contractors that are making heaps of money. War profiteers. It always goes back to money. So the thing that made America catapulted into the stratosphere in becoming the world's most powerful nation, the world's superpower, in less than 300 years, it's the same reason why it's falling right now. Because of corruption and because of money. So it's simple. We decouple the government from corporations. We pass laws making it illegal. The practices that they're doing now, because yes, it's illegal to do insider trading. But insider trading is not well defined because there are 1,000 different ways that a politician can benefit from their position because they're not banned from stock trading. Ban politicians from stock trading. That's a first step. But what do I know? I'll get into that maybe in another episode. That's going to do it for this episode of Xendependently Minded. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you're not feeling too bleak. Hope you're feeling optimistic. Always focus on the beauty. Hold your loved ones close and be grateful. Appreciate life. Something that I like to do when I'm feeling really overwhelmed with life. I have a 25 to 30 minute commute to work every day. At night, before I go to bed, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I just think about how grateful I am to be healthy, to be happy, to be living to have a home, a roof over my head, and more than enough space than I need. I have a healthy family. My family is all safe. They have no health problems. My wife is beautiful and supportive, and truly, she keeps me sane. She's my wife for a reason. I think of things like that at night. And in the morning on my commute to work, what I like to do is find something beautiful on the way to work. Right now, here in Germany, it's fall. So the trees and the leaves are the color is just beautiful. The nature that surrounds my commute to work and really where I live, it's truly inspiring. It really, when you sit back and you look at all the beautiful things that you get to experience on this planet, it's hard to be ungrateful. There are a lot of things to be grateful for. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed out, if you're feeling depressed, think of the things that you're grateful for. Do a gratitude journal. That's what a lot of former addicts do when they're in recovery. Do a gratitude journal. It doesn't have to be a journal. You could meditate. When you're driving to work, when you're running on the treadmill, when you're working out at the gym, think of the things that you're grateful for and focus on them. Because there is a lot to be grateful for. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Xendependently Minded. Don't forget to support the Child Mind Institute or support Xendependently Minded, which in turn is supporting the Child Mind Institute. Buy some merch. It's the fall is coming, winter is coming. Get yourself a hoodie, get yourself a jacket, get yourself a beanie or a coffee mug, and stay hydrated, stay warm, stay safe, stay healthy. As always, stay safe, stay away from those crazies out there. Catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening.